Awesome. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I want to take a moment for everyone to log in and join the call. So, no worries. Grab your cup of coffee. We'll start in about 20 to 30 seconds. Oh, and also thank you so much to those of you who tuned in last month. We had a really great discussion with Andre and Siddharsan on identity and cloud identity. And Andre gave a really interesting use case around privilege escalation in your cloud assets. So definitely, if you joined us last month, thank you so much for joining us this month again. But if you missed that, definitely encourage you to go online, check it out as well. So this month, we have a really exciting session. I'm really excited to have Nick on. He's one of our sales engineers. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to be thinking strategically about the CNAPP space and kind of the consolidation in the security industry. All right. Hey, Nick, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really excited to have you on this month's Uptycs Live. I know you have a really interesting background. So yeah, why don't you take a moment and introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Hey guys, I'm Nick. I started at Uptycs just a couple months ago, but I've been in the cybersecurity space for about the last 10 years. Started my career off in the United States Air Force and bounced around to a couple of different startups, doing customer success, sales engineering, and actually in my past life, security engineering. So I kind of come from that background and now at Uptycs and love it and happy to continue on with this webinar and tell you all about CNAPP.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that great introduction. I'll tell you guys a bit about myself also. So I'm a technical product marketer here at Uptycs. So prior to Uptycs, I worked at Deloitte focusing on day-to-day security operations and systems engineering. And yeah, my spare time, I enjoy playing and watching soccer. So Nick, it's your first time on Uptycs Live. I'm really excited to have you on here. But before we get into it all, I do have just a couple fun rapid fire questions for you just to kind of break the ice, have some fun and get to know you a little better. So yeah, first off, what's your favorite movie? And then what is the best dish you can cook? So
sure.
Go ahead.
So favorite movies. So grew up playing soccer and baseball, love sports, love watching sports, playing sports. So obviously my favorite movies are going to revolve around sports. Sandlot is definitely one of the top movies in my favorite category. And then also Little Giants, which is just hilarious. And it's about, basically Pee Wee football. Great movies. And then, it's interesting, I love to cook. I love food. Hate the word foodie, but love food. So tonight I'm actually going to be making some grilled steak with an avocado lime fettuccine Alfredo. I've made it once before. It's 91 degrees out here in Denver and only getting hotter. So it's going to be a nice, fresh dish, good food, and definitely going to hit the pool later too.
Wow, that is impressive. Okay, so avocado lime fettuccine. I don't even know if I had like the creativity to even think of that as a dish. So right off the bat, I'm impressed. And we haven't even hit the technical stuff. So that is awesome. Great to know you a little bit more there also. Yeah, so for today's session, we have a really exciting session to cover. A lot to go over today, but a few housekeeping items just to start. This webinar is expected to go around 30 to 35 minutes, and it will be hosted online after. So if you miss parts of it or you just want to pass it along to someone else, it'll be free online. Just go check us out after. So we just finished those introductions. Thank you so much, Nick. This webinar itself will be split into two sections. First, a panelist-style discussion with Nick and myself for about 12 minutes, and then the second half will be a demo walkthrough led by Nick for the rest of the 12 to 15 minutes. So the discussion itself will break down into three sections. First, focusing on what exactly is this emerging CNAPP space, then moving into breaking down this platform versus portfolio approach we're seeing in the industry for consolidation. And then finally, bringing it all together to implement solutions and really think strategically about what solutions fit best for your environment and for your resources. Then after that discussion stage, we'll get into the fun stuff with the live demo led by Nick, showing off how to actually implement some of these conclusions from the discussion and using the Uptycs UI to kind of found that discussion. So we left time at the end for an open Q&A, but of course, please ask questions along the way and we'll keep an eye on the questions box. So let's go ahead, let's get started with it. So on this slide, I want to cover what exactly is a CNAPP solution, and why are we seeing this consolidation of security tools and vendors? So CNAPP is this term by Gartner, as you can see on the screen here, and it's really a unifying of the security tools kind of superpowers. So Tyson, who's the director of product marketing here at Uptycs, likes to call CNAPP kind of like the Avengers assembling, with each of CSPM, CWPP, XDR, et cetera, kind of being a superhero coming together to form the Avengers. And, it's a fun analogy, but I also think it's really correct. CNAPP is these different solutions really coming together, being stronger together, and really helping simplify your security market. So Nick, what do you think about when we talk about this CNAPP space?
Yeah, absolutely. So I first started my sales engineering career at a CSPM company, right? And then don't get me wrong, there's a lot of great products out in the market that do one of these feature sets, right? Whether they're CSPM, CWPP, XDR, KIM, KSPM. With this shift to CNAPP, and thank you, Gardner, for coining that term, because it's basically everything that Uptycs, does on a daily basis. But it's basically putting all of these different feature sets together to really help the organizations to not silo that data, to help them have everything at their fingertips, so that their organization can actually go out and bring value to their company and track things down immediately and see where everything is, how everything is going, and overall help out the security posture of their company.
No, I think that's really helpful. And I think to help frame that a little more, one of the big reasons for this consolidation is, part one of it is this economic force. Companies don't want to buy 18 different security products with 18 different licenses and deployment consoles and proprietary languages. Instead, they want to slim down the number of vendors they use. And I think on the vendor side, vendors want to be able to offer these expanded CNAPP solutions that really holistically cover your security use cases. And then kind of outside of that economic force, there's also this technical and practitioner level reasoning where, we as a security engineer, we don't want to silo our tools and have to train up on a dozen different vendor softwares to actually get the data and insights that should be quite easy to use. I think at its best, security is simplified, scalable, and powerful. And with a proper CNAPP solution, you can really get at the core of just simplifying your tools and creating a more robust, secure security solution. So, now that we've defined CNAPP, I want to show rather than just tell. So here on this graphic, we can really see how CSPM, CWPP, XDR, app scanning, and identity really come together to create this holistic platform protection. So in the middle here, you can see under cloud configuration, we see these categories related to traditional cloud security posture management, focusing here on that compliance and identity management across your cloud workloads and really into your Kubernetes environments as well. Then on the left side, we have that app scanning solutions looking at your CVEs, your secret scanning, and even moving into the traditional static or dynamic code scans. Then on the right side of the CNAPP solution, we're offering cloud workload protection that really helps monitor your workloads for detection and incident response. And I think a key aspect when you're looking at this slide here is to take away that there's a unifying of the data and control plane all the way from the development phase into your production runtime. And what that means is we're looking both at the data from the control plane view of your orchestration and policy level, but we're also looking a layer down at kind of that data, looking into your socket and process data events for each of your workloads. And when you unify that control and data plane, this kind of comes together in a CNAPP platform to give you a unified view of your console. So now that we've kind of figured out, okay, what is this CNAPP space? And we touched a little bit on why behind this consolidation for either economic or just quality of life reasons as a security engineer. I want to use this slide to really break down how are different security companies approaching this consolidation through either a portfolio or a platform approach. So Nick, I know you have some great hands-on experience at a few different vendors. I just kind of love to kind of hear your thoughts on how do you see this difference between these two categories of platform versus portfolio?
Absolutely. No, great question. So, a platform approach, I'm always going to be all hands on deck for, right? I think that is the best way to do it, building it from the ground up and building it all in one tool, same code bases, making sure everything works together correctly. Now, a portfolio approach, it can work for a short term, right? It's not going to be a long-term answer to all of your security needs. I've worked at many vendors. I've been acquired by a vendor, and I've watched the engineering team try to basically stitch a lot of different products together through acquisitions. And I will tell you, there are plenty of disgruntled customers because things just don't work. And, I've been at a couple of other vendors that have also had that platform approach where they're like, we are not going to be acquiring companies. If we want it, we're going to build it in-house in our product, and we're going to offer it to our customers. That way we know it works. That way we know how to fix everything. We know everything about it. It's native to us. It's not native to any other company through acquisition, whatever it might be. So obviously you can tell in my demeanor, I'm definitely for platform. But like I said, portfolio could work for a very short term, but it's not going to work for the long term. And a company like Uptycs, I came here just a few months ago. Uptycs really started as an endpoint detection type of company, right? And then we expanded into the cloud and we expanded into containers. And with that expansion, we've brought all these different features on that encompass CNAPP. And really, what we have become recently is, a next generation type of CNAPP analytics platform. And that's my approach to, a security program and building security from the ground up is that's how you have to do it, right?
No, and I think that's great. And just kind of recap a little bit there. I think there's so many great things you said, but one of the key differences is that when you go with this kind of portfolio buy to expand model, it's kind of putting a legacy wrapper on things, and it doesn't make it easy to use on a security engineer's day-to-day process. And just to kind of give what are a more kind of overview of the core differences here, and just to reiterate, a portfolio approach will focus on packaging or bundling products together, perhaps through acquisitions or with little to no integrations of the console or maybe a legacy wrapper. But on the other hand, Gartner kind of defines this platform approach with focusing on integrating these consoles and really supporting operational simplicity for different platforms or systems. So one thing that really stood out to me was Gartner even explicitly states that a portfolio approach will not fulfill any of the promised advantages of consolidation. And I'll say that again, a portfolio approach will not fulfill any of the promised advantages of consolidation, which I just found a fascinating statement by them. So Gartner is pushing this idea that we need to really think about how we bring our tools together, and we can't rely on kind of hacking these different products together. We really need like a strong foundation that first on the back end correlates and normalizes our data for common functions. And a portfolio approach is just kind of bundling these 18 different tools that we're talking about with a legacy wrapper, and helps on the sales cycle, but doesn't bring any of these advantages to consolidation that we want to see. And so just to kind of build off that a little more, though, I think it's fun to highlight how this platform approach would look in action. And I want to pause on this next slide just for a moment and kind of walk you through how a platform approach lets you build these CNAPP solutions. So for me, a portfolio approach is easy to visualize. You have a large security vendor acquiring smaller products that might integrate into their bundles. But a platform approach is a little more difficult to visualize. So I wanted to share this slide, partly because I think it's helpful, but also I personally just really enjoy this graphic. So as you can see, the Uptycs solution is a security analytics platform for your cloud workloads, your cloud infrastructure, your containers, your VMs, and your traditional endpoints like laptops and servers down below. So building from that bottom layer up, we structure telemetry as SQL tables at the point of collection. And this platform approach allows us to do real-time analysis and correlation on the data as it streams into the cloud data lake. And once there, we can answer questions across those CSPM, CWPP, XDR use cases like, okay, what vulnerable packages do I have deployed? What's my compliance posture? Or like, what did this bad actor do on my system 2 weeks ago? And then from there, we can even build more complex questions around really fast detection frameworks built on behavioral or signature-based detections using Yara scanning. But effectively, though, when you look at this graphic, we're kind of flipping the script. And by looking first at that bottom layer of your attack surfaces and then that security analytics, we're focusing on getting high-quality data. And a platform approach builds solutions on top of that high-quality data that are truly unified for your cloud and endpoint assets and attack surfaces. So now that we've just talked about, okay, what exactly is the CNAPP space? What is it a consolidation of with CSPM, CWP, and XDR? What's the economic and engineer level forces that are kind of bringing about this CNAPP space and the why behind it all? And then just recently on the last slide, I kind of talked about the key differences between how different vendors are using a portfolio or a platform approach for CNAPP. At the core of this slide, though, I kind of want to bring it together and think about, okay, you're actually in an organization looking to evaluate vendors. What are the tangible and intangible benefits to a platform CNAPP solution that we're going to see in the next year and in the next 5 years? And at this stage, I want us to, really think effectively about why we want a CNAPP solution and what exactly that would look like in practice. So yeah, Nick, I'm just kind of curious for you, what are your thoughts about kind of thinking strategically on this CNAPP solution space?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think quite honestly, people that have been in the security space for a while probably will tell you that they've seen this coming.
Yeah.
definitely with the emergence of all these different products that, do these specific types of features, but don't really tie it all together. And now that companies are coming out with a CNAPP solution, you're going to see that take off, because why would you stitch all these different tool sets together within your organization to provide the same data that you can get from a platform that basically embraces all of that information and gives it to you at your fingertips?
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And I think kind of building off our earlier discussions on the first two slides, it's really vital that security engineers, analysts, managers, we're all on the same page with where our data is stored and how to access it. Security is a team sport. We need to emphasize cooperation and openness even with our own orgs. And whether you're at a large or a small enterprise, we can't just have one person be the one who knows where to pull the logs if an incident occurs. What a CNAPP platform does is it helps centralize that data, but also that knowledge piece. Just kind of, I'll give like a quick anecdote, but in the first couple of years of my career, I was actually a security engineer, and I had to do this manually remoting into servers to pull log data for either a root cause analysis or just trying to remember credentials for specific niche tools and how to use them. And we had to essentially memorize where are all these locations? Is the right team member on call to kind of help us do these core functions? And that's really not a best practice. The way forward for how security teams ought to operate with their tooling is kind of the CNAPP solution. We want to reduce that mean time to understanding, really empower practitioners to know their environment and easily secure them as well. So I think kind of a really interesting piece of the CNAPP solution space is for any managers or team builders on this call also, think about the shortage of cybersecurity talent and just the increasing turnover rate as people switch companies. We want tools that are easy to use as you have new members join the team. And we want to give you a strong foundation to build a sustainable cybersecurity program. You don't want isolated tools or proprietary solutions that are only usable when the right person is on call. And we all know these use cases. We want that simple, effective, and scalable security solutions because that's really what's working best. So without further ado, though, I think we've had a great discussion. I do want to turn it over to you, Nick. Any thoughts before we turn it over to kind of that platform solution, walking through what a CNAPP would look like in practice and how we unify those cloud, endpoint, and container categories?
Absolutely. So there's one thing I just wanted to add, and I think pretty much anybody on this call will agree with me. And to some of your points, with the shortage of talent out there, budgetary constraints currently with our economy is not amazing, whatever it might be. The easiest thing to think about when it comes to your security program for your organization is the word continuity, right? When you have people trained up on tools and they leave to go somewhere else because maybe they're chasing that dollar, whatever it might be, continuity is something that you need within your security program to keep it successful. And with an all-in-one, all-encompassing platform that has these kinds of features for you, it increases the continuity of your security program because you only have to train your people on one tool, right? So I will get into the demo after that, but I just wanted to put that little tidbit out there because I think, people overlook that word and the meaning of it for their security program. And it's one of the most important things to think about when you're creating that security program, that security team for your organization.
Perfect. Well, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing, and I'll let you go ahead and take over.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right. I should be sharing my screen.
We can see it great.
Perfectly. So this is the Uptycs platform, right? I'm not going to dive quite into this dashboard just yet. I'm going to show you how to get started with Uptycs. It's very simple. And basically what you would do is go to the software downloads. Up here, you're going to see all the different platforms that we support. You can utilize Uptycs Protect or not, however you would like to use these agents. And scrolling down, you'll also be able to see all the Kubernetes agents as well. Now, what I want to mention here is, I know there are going to be questions about the agent. Is it lightweight? Is it, does it take up a lot of CPU? I can tell you from firsthand, it's about 2 to 3% CPU usage. It is a very lightweight agent. We have the opportunity within the platform to actually upgrade those agents anytime there are new pushes for those agents. It's very easy, very simple to set up, and it's very lightweight. Now, on that subject, if you are questioning, well, you say it's lightweight, is it really? Within all the data that we pull in, you can actually see inside your console how much CPU usage those those agents are actually utilizing on your machines, because we're gathering that telemetry data for you, right? So that's where we really started, like I mentioned in the first place, was XDR, right? Endpoint. So going back to that, is here's a nice overview of your assets, right? This is a great, what I would call an executive dashboard. It gives you a lot of great information up front. Obviously, you can dive very deep because we utilize that agent that gathers all that information for you. So you'll be able to see your assets by OS, your assets that are online and offline. What does your fleet compliance look like? And, honestly, I'm going to bring that up really quickly. Compliance. We have compliance for endpoints, cloud, and containers. Even if I don't go over it right now, we have a ton of different compliance standards that you can actually help adhere to within your organization by utilizing the Uptycs platform. So this is a great overview. It's going to give you a lot of information, but let's dive deep into something that looks really awesome and provides a lot of information, right? So the next thing I'm going to go into is going to be detections. So if you would like to get into detections, there's two ways of doing it. Obviously, you can see it on the left-hand side here. That's going to actually bundle all of your detections from all the different products within Uptycs that you're utilizing. But if you're curious just about your endpoint detections, you would then go into endpoint and into detections. So once you've done that, you'll then be able to see this screen that's going to give you all of your alerts and detections for your endpoints. I've clicked onto the highs because honestly, that's what I'm most interested in. The lows may be important, but they're probably not as important as these high examples. So I'm also going to dive into this Yara rule match on process memory Linux malware. And what this is going to show you is a ton of very valuable information. If you do adhere or work with the MITRE attack matrix, you're going to see everything that it hits on the left-hand side. You're going to see all the different signals that we have gathered when it comes to this specific type of malware that's matching on this Yara rule, right? You're going to be able to see all the context on the right-hand side, whether it's asset information, files and processes, and even the users that are associated with it as well. You'll be able to see activities, if there are any. This is basically internal use. So if you want to write any notes on it, feel free so that your team members know exactly what's going on there. You'll be able to see the asset information here. You'll be able to see, it is a 10 out of 10 on the threat score. So it is very important. Obviously, it's matching on malware. So we always want to make sure that, we are looking at this malware, making sure that it hasn't expanded to any other different devices, machines, assets within your environment. The real awesome part here, though, that's going to give you that deep insight into what is actually going on is going to be this detection graph, right? This is going to show you the whole path of what is actually occurring when this malware has entered into your environment on this specific asset. Now, Jeremy, did you want to add any additional color on the MITRE attack framework or on this specific rule match that I'm showing right now?
Yeah, I mean, I love our detection frameworks. I think it's one of the more interesting pieces, and it's also one of our stronger pieces as well. But yeah, here on this graph, you can see kind of the process graph and the parent process for every process. But I think what's really interesting to me also is that kind of MITRE attack framework mapping is on that signals page. I talked about it a little bit on the discussion, was the idea of kind of arming our security engineers and kind of helping our teammates out during this time frame. And I think what the MITRE attack matrix does here is kind of give us those tactics and techniques of any attacker or threat actor that we're seeing. And what's really nice about this dashboard is we can see how these small behavioral processes kind of build into a bigger detection framework that gets, as you can see now, a 10 out of 10 scale. But on the left, we can see that mapped specifically to the MITRE attack framework and kind of help out our security engineers respond to these threats. And if you're doing any incident response as well, kind of understand, okay, this is how we're seeing an attacker move throughout our network or try and infiltrate our process. So yeah, just kind of off the bat there, I think it's really interesting. And, in the detection graph itself, I know you're going to dive into it a little bit, but there's just tons of fun stuff here. And I think it's interesting, for the most part, Uptycs is read-only, but we can also do kind of write actions as well, where we can stop and kill processes and quarantine or carve out files as well. So maybe we can save that for another discussion, but it is really interesting where if you see something that looks malicious or that's something you just kind of want to investigate a little further, you can carve out that file or block and stop that process. So yeah, that was all I had right here. I'll hand it back over to you.
that really encompasses the XDR, but we're talking about CNAPP here. So we got to get into the cloud, right? So the next thing I'm going to be going into is the cloud. So if you would like to navigate over to that, you just go and hover over that cloud. And we do offer support for AWS, GCP, and Azure. And what you're going to see is, while I bring up the AWS overview, is going to be very similar to Azure and GCP as well, just focused on AWS. So we're going to hit on that overview dashboard. And right here, as you can see on the left-hand side, are going to be all the services that we actually support, right? Then you're going to see that there are, a ton of rules for each of those services, how many failures you have, if there are high, mediums, or lows, right? A lot of CSPM breaches, I would say, have to do with misconfigurations. That's really the heart of CSPM, right? Cloud security posture management. Now, for any of these different services, you can then dive into any that have this insights button. The next thing I'm going to go into is going to be this simple storage service, also known as S3, and we're going to dive into this dashboard. What this is going to show you is basically all your S3 information when it comes to your AWS accounts, right? How many storage buckets you have by region. What is the bucket history over the last 7 days? Now, the real important part is to keep an eye on buckets with encryption, versioning, exposed to the internet, with web access, and with SSL. Now, we know that there are reasons to have S3 buckets open to the public. There are also reasons not to have them open to the public. So we're handing that information to you immediately so you understand what is open to the public, what isn't, what's secured, what isn't. Because sometimes those storage buckets hold very, important classified information, whatever it might be, whether it's to your business, PII information of your employees, your customers, whatever it might be. You need to be aware of where they sit, what kind of policies they have around it, and what kind of information is really held within that, so you can do a better job of making sure that you don't have a data breach, right? So that's going to give you a really good understanding of your S3 buckets. And like I mentioned on the last page of the overview dashboard, you can dive into the dashboards that have that insights button and get that real granular information about those services. The next one I'm going to go over is identity and entitlement analytics, also known as KSPM, right? Right now, I think that people and organizations have really overlooked the whole identity and entitlements of your users within their cloud infrastructure, right? And that's why you're seeing this become a lot more popular in the market currently. Is we want to help you get to least privilege, right? We don't want users to have access that they shouldn't have, right? Not everybody needs to be an admin to get their job done. As long as we can help you, fill those gaps to make sure you don't have those gaps in security, we can then help you prevent those breaches, right? So as you can see here on this dashboard, is going to be, your identity posture, your identity governance, your risk, and then the risk indicators, right? Does your root account have MFA or access keys associated with it? How many privileged identities do you have? Do you have credentials that are at risk? Users without MFA. Now, keep in mind, MFA isn't always necessary for, either specific compliance standards or policies within your organization. But hey, an extra layer of defense is never bad. So we're providing this information for you. You can go ahead and get your users on with their MFA on their user accounts and add that extra layer of defense. How many user level SSH keys do you have? And then lastly, how many overly permissive identities? Now, like I mentioned earlier, when I just got to this page, was we want to get you to least privilege. We can help you get to least privilege and make sure we cut down on the potential for a breach, right? So this is our CSPM or our KSPM offering that ties very closely with CSPM. A lot of breaches that have occurred recently, either their misconfigurations or their exposed keys, right? People accidentally hard code their keys into code bases, and maybe it gets out to the public on accident. We want to help you make sure that you are on top of your configurations and your identity and entitlements. And that's why we provide that CSPM and KSPM within the cloud for you, and also within the umbrella of CNAPP. Now, the next thing I'm going to go over is going to be our KSPM. So for our Kubernetes, our containers, right? And how you would do that is you would hover over containers, go to overview or any of the different options within containers. to get the visibility that you're looking for. So I'm going to go into the Kubernetes graph view. This is a nice little overview. On the left-hand side, you're going to be able to see all of your clusters, right? And you're going to see that there's a C, V, and T. And there are some that are red, there are some that are white. C is basically means that, since it's colored in red, there is some compliance issues here. There's some compliance failures. We want to make sure you're aware of that. So if you do adhere to any compliance standards, you know what to fix so you can pass those audits. Then you can there's C. V is going to be vulnerabilities. So if there are any vulnerabilities associated with those clusters and namespaces, you will know. And then T is going to be threats. We also do bring in threat intelligence, right? So on top of CNAPP, we're also bringing in that threat intelligence information to tie in with all of that telemetry data that we're gathering on your assets, your machines, your servers, cloud assets, endpoints, right? And we're tying all that information together and allowing you to see and give you that whole picture of what's going on, not just in your cloud ecosystem, but also within your organization's ecosystem. The next thing I'm going to go over is going to be, our runtime, our build vulnerabilities, right? What are your image vulnerabilities during your build, right? We have a couple of images here. And as you can see, we have a bunch of vulnerabilities that are associated with this specific image that, we may have thought about deploying within the Kubernetes ecosystem, but obviously the build status failed. And there's a ton of vulnerabilities that are associated with that. We want to make sure that you're aware of it, right? So you're going to be able to see the vulnerability. You'll be able to dive into that and see what it is, the severity. So is it critical? Is it not? The CVSS score that's associated with it, days since it was published, the package name, the package version, and if there's a fix available. We're giving you all this information immediately so you can go ahead and fix all of this. Now, in my past life, and maybe Jeremy can attest to this too, but I didn't have this type of tool set when I was a security engineer. I had to manually find all of this stuff. I didn't know what package version was deployed on what, right? We had a bunch of assets that were running in the cloud that powered our product. And, we had to try to keep up to date as much as possible. And this is when we were really reading up on CVSS vulnerabilities and CVEs and actually having to dive into machines to manually check to see what version was running on that machine to see if it was vulnerable or not. Because if it was vulnerable and, heaven forbid it was vulnerable for a long time, hopefully nobody breached it. Right here, we're going to let you know immediately and give you the fix so that you can go ahead and clean these images before you deploy to your containers or Kubernetes. Jeremy, I know that, you have a lot of knowledge on K8s and containers. Would you like to dive in and add some additional color here?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with you on some of that manual work. I remember having to like I said, RDP into some servers, actually open up and see what the version numbers were. I had a little Excel sheet on the side. I was like tracking version numbers, and then every like Patch Tuesday from Microsoft was like a big event, and you're trying to like see what all you need to do and kind of correlate around that. So I really agree. I think one of the best features of this is just kind of like that assets page you showed early on, where it's just kind of helping simplify your environment and really bringing that knowledge out of your environment and into a console where you can easily digest it. But you were asking more specifically about containers and K8s, so I will answer about that as well. So yeah, so I think this is one of the best use cases here for kind of understanding how a CNAPP solution helps unify maybe tool sets or monitoring tools and data silos that existed before the CNAPP space. So right now we can see the build stage for your Kubernetes and containers environment here. So what we do is we deploy a sensor on your build server, and we're monitoring all of your images prior to deployment. And we're saying, hey, here are some vulnerabilities you might want to find before you deploy, and you might want to fix this. And this is kind of the state of your images prior to deployment. So that's in the build stage. In the runtime stage, Nick, if you go over to the next slide, we kind of do two things. When we help orchestrate your, we help with like the audit and enforcement policies of your Kubernetes layer. So there's kind of this control layer and your data layer at runtime. And at that control layer, we're looking at Kubernetes enforcement and policies. And at that data layer, we're actually running a sensor on your node to gather all of that telemetry off the node itself. So historically, when we're talking about build time scanning, orchestration policy, an actual data layer policy of your nodes themselves, that might be 3 different tools. And that might be completely siloed from one another, and you can't correlate that data together. What we're doing here in this solution is within 2 dashboards, you have an understanding of here is my pre-deployment build stage images, and here's the vulnerabilities on them that I need to fix prior to deployment. And then at the run stage, I have a control layer view of my audit and enforcement policies at the Kubernetes level. And we have a sensor on your node itself monitoring the containers, and that's all brought together under a CNAPP solution. And I think that's like a really good way of thinking about it, is that same kind of bringing together of these previously siloed tools is extended into the cloud and your traditional endpoints as well. We just couldn't dive into it all today. But hopefully that use case kind of brings together that understanding of what actually is going on with these CNAPP solutions. And kind of as we think of these cloud-first environments over the next 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, this is what we're trying to do to help unify this knowledge and really bring it out of your environment and give it to you in an easily digestible form. So Nick, that's all I had for you. Yeah, definitely. I'll hand it back to you.
Awesome. No, that was great, Jeremy, and I appreciate it a lot. And to Jeremy's point, we did a very high-level demo today. I hope everybody enjoyed it. Now, we would love for you to come back so we can get some one-on-one time and actually go in deeper and answer any questions that you have, maybe around the platform, whether it's containers, endpoint, CWPP, CSPM, or KIM. So please let us know. I'm going to hand it back to you, Jeremy. I'll stop sharing my screen now, and we can head to the Q&A.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I just want to be mindful of everyone's time. I know we've kind of taken a good bit of it, and hopefully it's productive for you guys as much as it's been productive for us. But I do want to open it up for the Q&A as well. I know there was a couple questions that came in while we were on this call. But yeah, let me go ahead and look at them, and then I will. So one of them, Nick, actually right off the bat is, so we're talking about all of this data. Is the data only usable on the Uptycs dashboard, or can I use this data with my other security solutions and integrate it? So I'll let you go ahead and take that, kind of talking about this logging data.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I was actually at a log management company. I believe that, there's a ton of information in logs, obviously. And that's why anytime anything is done on a machine, an asset, a server, whatever it might be, it generates a log. It's a trail. It's an audit trail, right? So great thing about Uptycs is that we do play very friendly with a lot of different tools in the market, right? So I'm just going to take, for example, log management, Splunk, Sumo Logic, Datadog, Elastic, whatever you're utilizing. One of the benefits of utilizing Uptycs as an analytics platform for CNAPP, XDR, whatever you're utilizing it for, we can actually help you save cost on those log management solutions, right? We will just send those contextual alerts to those solutions so that you're not actually paying for maybe 20 gigabytes of data a day. Maybe you're paying for a gigabyte of data a day. You can get all that analytics information within the Uptycs platform. And then, depending on your structure within your organization, you can shoot those contextual alerts off to Splunk or your log management solution and continue your path from there on however you like to remediate issues within your organization.
No, that's a great answer to the question as well. And I'm seeing another question too. I can take this one. So we talked earlier about platform versus portfolio, with Gartner really kind of talking about portfolio in a negative light. So I just kind of wanted to expand on that a little bit, and maybe why Gartner kind of emphasized that portfolio wouldn't bring out those consolidation benefits. And I think one of the things that we consider when we think about these CNAPP solutions is not just the front end console, but also the back end. So on the back end side, usually a platform approach will kind of consolidate all of this data for you, normalize it, and bring it all together into that unified console space. Whereas the portfolio solution might require different deployments and different sensors to bring it all together. So in that sense, the reason why a platform benefit would bring about, say, the true benefits of consolidation is that through that platform approach, we're really seeing all of that data come together into one sense, and your mean time to understanding, your ability to extract insights becomes quicker, it becomes faster, and it becomes a lot simpler. Whereas in that portfolio approach, you're still seeing these disparate solutions. You just kind of purchase them together, and there might be a legacy wrapper around it, but there's still kind of that slight barrier to getting those insights as quick as you might like. So yeah, I think that's a great question. I'm curious really how Gartner kind of fully defines this space going forward. But no, it's a fantastic question. I love talking about it. So definitely feel free to reach out after, whoever sent that one over. But yeah, no, I do want to be mindful for our time. We have taken up a good bit of it, and I'm really enjoyed this conversation with you, Nick. I'm really happy with having you on this month's Uptycs Live. Thank you so much to everyone who did join us this month. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out below. I'm always happy to talk anything privacy, security, anything and all in that space. So really enjoyed having you on today, and that's all we have. So thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day. Awesome.
Thanks, Jeremy. And thank you, everybody, for taking the time out of your day.